Welcome to our deep dive, you guys, this time into the world of credit analysts. We're going to give you some serious insider knowledge today. Think of it as like a crash course, in what they do, like what makes them tick.
Yeah, we're going to be zeroing in on the interview process for this one. We've got this list of 20 questions, common questions they ask potential credit analysts.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Interview questions. Sounds a little dry, right?
Yeah.
But trust me, these questions, they're sneakily fascinating.
Oh, they are.
They really reveal those like real-world challenges these financial, what would you call them?
Detectives.
These financial detectives face every day, right?
Exactly.
So before we dive into the nitty-gritty, the real details of all these questions, let's set the stage. Can you kind of like paint us a picture of what a credit analyst actually does and why their role is so crucial in the whole financial system?
Okay, so imagine the financial world as like a bustling city, right?
Yeah.
Credit analysts are the gatekeepers. They're the ones that are carefully evaluating who gets the keys to enter and contribute.
I like that, gatekeepers.
And their decisions have like a ripple effect. It impacts everything from personal loans, like if you want to buy a car, to mortgages for houses, to these huge business investments.
So they're not just like number crunchers then.
No, yeah.
They're the ones deciding, who actually gets a shot at those financial dreams. Sounds like a lot of pressure.
High stakes.
High stakes.
Yeah. To do it well, to be a good credit analyst, they need to be able to analyze, of course, but
Right.
also they need to have a keen understanding of financial regulations and they got to connect with people,
Even in those like tough situations.
especially in the tough situations.
Oh, man.
All right, well, let's jump into some of those interview questions then. I'm particularly intrigued by the ones that try to assess a candidate's ability to spot rig and even potential fraud. What kind of questions are we talking about here? Well, there's one question that really gets to the heart of it, and it's explain how you would use data analytics to identify potential fraud in loan applications. And this question highlights a really crucial shift in the field.
Oh.
It's not just about gut feeling anymore.
Okay, so we're talking algorithms,
Yeah.
big data.
All of that.
Wow.
Credit analysts are using these like increasingly sophisticated tools to analyze massive amounts of data, and they're looking for those subtle red flags, the little things that might indicate something fishy is going on.
Give us an example. Like, what are some of those red flags? I want to get into the mind of a fraud-busting credit analyst.
Okay, so picture this. Someone submits a loan application, and on paper, everything looks perfect.
Okay, yeah.
Perfect credit score, healthy income, all the right boxes are checked.
Checks out.
But a good analyst, a savvy analyst, they might take a closer look. They might compare that reported income with their bank statements.
So it's about like connecting the dots. You're seeing if the story like actually holds up in real life.
Yes, exactly. They're looking for inconsistencies. Like maybe the applicant claims a super high salary, but then their bank statements show like barely any deposits. Or maybe they've used slightly different names or addresses on different applications they've submitted.
Sneaky, sneaky. So it really is like detective work, huh?
It is.
Sifting through all the clues, the evidence, to try to uncover the truth.
Right. And sometimes it's those tiny little details that crack the case wide open. Our source material actually has this really cool anecdote about a credit analyst who caught a fraudulent application because of the handwriting.
Wait, hold on. The handwriting.
Yeah. So the application, it looked totally fine, flawless on the surface. But this analyst, they noticed that the signature, it didn't quite match the handwriting on the other parts of the form, just a slight difference,
Wow.
but enough to trigger, a much deeper investigation.
That's incredible. Talk about attention to detail.
It just goes to show that even though technology has a big role to play, that human intuition, that human observation, those skills are still so important in this field.
It's a good reminder that behind all the data and algorithms, there are real people, with real consequences.
Absolutely. And that actually brings us to another crucial aspect of a credit analyst's job. They've got to navigate that complex world of regulations and compliance.
Right, because it's not just about numbers then.
No.
We're talking about laws, people's lives.
Exactly. There's a question in our list that highlights this. It says, are you familiar with the Fair Credit Reporting Act, also known as FCRA, and other relevant regulations? This question, it's more than just checking if they know the rules.
Right.
It's emphasizing the responsibility, that weight of responsibility that comes with this job.
Okay, I got to ask. For those of us that don't speak fluent financial jargon, can you break down what exactly the FCRA is all about and, why should we care?
Okay, so the FCRA, it's a federal law that's designed to protect consumers from inaccurate or unfair credit reporting practices. Basically, it makes sure that your credit information is handled responsibly. Gives you rights if there are errors.
So it's like a safeguard, making sure the credit reporting agencies and lenders are playing by the rules.
Precisely.
Okay, so credit analysts, they need to know all about the FCRA
They have to.
so they can make sure that everything they do is compliant, right?
Mhm.
And that they're upholding those protections for us, for consumers.
Exactly.
It's like they're walking this tightrope between assessing risk, but then also protecting people's rights. That's going to be tricky.
It's a delicate balance. And it's not just about like checking the boxes and following the law. It's about really understanding the impact these regulations can have on people's lives.
Right, so it's not just a technical skill set then. It's about ethical decision-making, understanding the human side of all this finance stuff.
You got it. And speaking of the human side of things, even the most analytical jobs out there, they still require strong communication skills. And this is especially true for credit analysts.
Yeah, I can see that. Because they're dealing with people who are making these, like, huge financial decisions, right?
Big decisions.
Often in stressful situations.
Exactly. And that leads us to our next set of interview questions. This set, it focuses on how credit analysts handle those critical conversations. How do they talk to their customers?
So we've got this fascinating mix, right, of like data analysis, but also this human interaction. What kind of questions do they ask to see how good a candidate is at communicating?
Well, one of the classic questions is, tell me about a time when you had to explain a complex financial concept to a customer. It's all about seeing if they can break things down, make it understandable, especially for someone who's already feeling overwhelmed.
Oh, I bet. I mean, those conversations, they can't always be easy, right? Imagine having to tell someone why their loan application was denied or why their interest rate is higher than they were hoping for. That takes some serious, what do you call it, tact.
It does. And you're right. Those are tough conversations. That's why another question focuses on exactly that. Something like, how do you handle a situation where a customer is unhappy with the loan decision? They want to see empathy, active listening. Can you stay calm under pressure? All of that.
So it's not just about delivering the bad news. It's more about giving them context, helping them understand the reasoning behind it all.
Exactly. Our source material actually talks about a technique that good credit analysts use in these situations. It's all about breaking down those complex processes into these simple step-by-step explanations.
Ah, I see. So instead of just hitting them with all the jargon, you got to give them a roadmap, help them follow along.
Precisely. When people are stressed, it's harder to process information. So if you can simplify things, break it down into steps, you can actually reduce that anxiety. And you can build some trust, even if you're not giving them the news they wanted to hear.
You're almost like a financial therapist in a way, helping people through these like emotional minefields.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of that for sure. And all these communication skills, they're not just important for talking to customers, they're also really crucial for internal problem solving and decision making too.
Which brings us to, I think, another really interesting set of questions, the ones that really test how well a candidate can think on their feet, make those tough calls, even when they don't have all the information. What are some of those questions?
Well, one that jumps out is describe a situation where you had to make a decision quickly, but you didn't have all the information you needed. And that's a very real scenario for credit analysts, especially in this crazy, fast-paced financial world we're in.
Oh, I can only imagine. Deadlines, incomplete data. It sounds intense. How do they even start to approach those kinds of situations?
It's all about tapping into those analytical skills, and their experience, their knowledge of the industry. And somehow they've got to quickly assess the situation and make the best possible call, even with those information gaps.
So it's not just about knowing all the answers. It's about knowing how to get the right information fast and then just taking a calculated risk.
Exactly. Being resourceful, thinking critically, and being okay with not knowing everything.
You got to have confidence to do this job right.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And that actually takes us to our final set of questions. These ones give you a peek into the broader scope of a credit analyst's work, the stuff that goes beyond just looking at individual loans.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give us a sneak peek at these beyond the basics questions. What other areas are we talking about here?
Well, they touch on a lot of things. Working with automated underwriting systems, for example, setting credit limits, developing policies, managing tasks efficiently, even measuring the overall performance of the whole credit department.
It sounds like being a credit analyst isn't just about looking at loans. It's about understanding that big picture of the financial industry, how all the pieces fit together.
You got it. It's about being able to zoom out and see how your work contributes to the success of the whole organization.
And speaking of big picture thinking, one of these beyond the basics questions, it really caught my eye. The one about experience working with automated underwriting systems. I mean, with all the amazing technology we have nowadays, are human credit analysts just going to be replaced by robots?
That's a good question, and a lot of people are asking that. But even though these automated systems are definitely changing things, they're not totally replacing human judgment. Not yet, anyway.
So it's more like humans and robots are collaborating, learning to work together.
Exactly. That question about automated systems, it's there to see if a candidate knows about those tools and can use them effectively. It's not saying human insight doesn't matter anymore.
That makes sense. I mean, we still need that human touch, right? To connect the dots, see those patterns, make sure those algorithms are actually working for us, not the other way around.
Right. There's another question in this category that focuses on the criteria used to set credit limits for customers. And this one, it really gets at the core of risk management. Understanding how much credit someone can handle responsibly. It's about finding that right balance, helping people achieve their financial goals, but also making sure the lender is protected from potential losses.
That's got to be a tough balancing act, especially when you think about all those emotional factors that can influence someone's financial decisions.
It is, and that's why the interview process often dives into those softer skills as well. It's not just about the numbers, it's about understanding that human side of finance and being able to navigate those tricky situations, with empathy and good communication.
It sounds like a seriously multifaceted role.
It really is. And the rest of the questions in this beyond the basics category, they really emphasize that. They get into things like developing credit policies,
Mhm.
which means you need a deep understanding of the regulations and you've got to translate all those guidelines into actual procedures.
So you're like a rule interpreter, but also a creative problem solver.
Exactly. And then there's the question about managing a lot of tasks effectively, which just shows how demanding and fast-paced this job can be. Credit analysts, they're often juggling multiple projects, deadlines, it can get a little crazy.
Sounds like you need to be organized and good at staying calm under pressure.
Absolutely. And then finally, there's the question about measuring how well the credit department is performing. And this highlights that strategic side of the job. Credit analysts actually contribute to the organization's success, by tracking key metrics, seeing what needs to improve, and recommending ways to optimize those processes.
Wow, we've covered a ton of ground here. I mean, from detecting fraud and assessing risk to all those regulations, communicating with customers, even contributing to the strategic direction of the whole department. It's clear that being a credit analyst is so much more than just crunching numbers.
I'm glad you see that. It's a challenging field, it's dynamic, and you've got to have a passion for finance to really thrive.
But before we wrap up our deep dive here, I want to circle back to something you said earlier, the importance of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, the FCRA, for protecting consumers.
Absolutely. It's a vital piece of legislation. The FCRA is crucial for making sure there's fairness and transparency in the credit reporting process.
And, it made me realize that while credit analysts play a huge role in upholding those protections, we as individuals, we also need to understand our rights. We have to be proactive about managing our own credit information.
I completely agree. Understanding the FCRA and how it affects you, that's key for making good financial decisions and protecting your financial well-being.
So I actually have a question for our listeners, something to think about. After learning about how important the FCRA is, what steps can you take to make sure your own credit information is accurate and being handled responsibly?
That's a great question to leave them with. It encourages them to take control of their financial health, become active participants in that whole credit reporting process.
Exactly. We've given them a little peek behind the curtain into the world of credit analysts, shown them how complex the financial system can be. But the real learning starts when they apply what they've learned to their own lives.
And who knows, maybe we've even sparked someone's interest in becoming a credit analyst themselves.
Wouldn't that be cool? I think we've done a pretty good job of showcasing the challenges and the opportunities that come with this kind of career. So listener, if you're all curious about what you've heard today, I encourage you to keep exploring, maybe check your own credit report, do some research on different types of loans, maybe even look into what it takes to become a credit analyst.
That's great advice. The world of finance, it's full of surprises. And there's always more to learn.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of credit analysts. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring. It really does. It's like You're never bored, are you?
Never a dull moment. It's a career that keeps you on your toes, that's for sure.
And it's changing all the time too, right? With technology and, new challenges popping up.
Oh, absolutely. It's constantly evolving. That's why it's so important for credit analysts to keep learning, always staying ahead of the game.
And actually, that brings me to another question I had about those beyond the basics interview questions.
Mm.
The one about developing credit policies, that one really got me thinking. What exactly does that involve? What kind of skills do you need for that?
Well, developing credit policies, it's all about taking those complicated regulations, the legal stuff, and turning them into practical guidelines, the rules that actually guide lending decisions. It's about finding that balance, managing risk, but also making sure people can access credit when they need it.
So it's like you're writing the rule book for the whole credit department.
Yeah.
Making sure all those decisions are like consistent and fair. And of course, following all the regulations.
Exactly. And to do that well, you need to really understand all those regulations inside and out. You have to be able to spot potential risks before they happen. And you need to be a clear communicator to make sure everyone understands the policies and how to follow them.
Sounds tricky. Like if you're too strict, you might be shutting out people who actually deserve credit.
Right.
But if you're too lenient, then you're increasing the risk of, defaults and instability.
That's the challenge. People who develop credit policies, they need to be super analytical. They have to be adaptable. And they've got to be able to think strategically,
Mhm.
about the long-term impact of their decisions.
And I bet they have to be good at explaining those policies, not just to people within the company, but to customers too, right?
Absolutely. Clear communication is so important in every aspect of credit analysis, but especially when you're setting those ground rules, the foundation for the whole lending process.
It's amazing how all these different skills, the data analysis, the risk assessment, communication, compliance, strategic thinking, how it all comes together in this one role.
Right.
It's like a credit analyst wears so many different hats.
You got it. It's a multifaceted role, for sure. It takes a diverse skill set and a real passion for finance to succeed.
Well, I think we've officially unpacked the world of credit analysts. I mean, we've looked at those interview questions, peeled back the layers of their responsibilities, talked about how the field is constantly changing. I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too. I hope our listener has a better understanding now of how important credit analysts are to our financial system.
Me too. They're like those unsung heroes, working behind the scenes to assess risk, ensure compliance, protect consumers, making sure that whole system runs smoothly.
Absolutely. And, who knows, maybe someone listening is now thinking, hey, that sounds like a career I'd be interested in.
That would be awesome. I think we've shown that it's a challenging career, but also super rewarding. So, to our listener, if you're even a little bit intrigued by what you've heard today, keep digging. Check your own credit report. Learn about different loans. Maybe even look into what it takes to become a credit analyst.
Couldn't agree more. The world of finance is full of interesting stuff. Always something new to discover.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of credit analysts.
Yeah.
Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.